Okay, so after nearly 30 years, we have Swamp Thing 88, which is the issue of Swamp Thing, or at least the beginning of the story, like a couple of issues, I think it's 4 issues of Swamp Thing that weren't printed way back in 88. Um, and you can't see why, possibly. Controversial is probably a way of seeing it, but I'm glad they've done it because it just reminds me of how cool comics were back then. So everything is reprinted as it was. So even the Johnny DC, the DC checklist for the stuff out this week, very very cool. So Swamp Thing is going back in time again. I'm not. I don't think I've read any Swamp Thing apart from a few issues and the stuff that I've got in hardcovers since then, the omnibuses, before it became Vertigo. Um, so I'm hoping that they're going to reprint those so I can read everything, but we'll just see. It'd be nice if they put this in the DC Finest as well to make sure it all kind of flows through. Anyway, he's traveling back in time. As he's traveling back in time, he's basically seeing Crisis happen, and then he comes out the other side of Crisis and ends up going back in time, back in time, back in time until he ends up here in the time of Jesus. Um, and the weird thing is, I'm not quite sure why. I'm not quite sure what the point of this story is in kind of like Swamp Thing's history. But basically, there's some people here that aren't particularly happy with him, which apparently pretended to be the wise men at one point. Um, they this demon kind of comes along. They summon this demon. The demon comes along and says, "Oh yeah, you do realise that looking upon me means death." It's like, that's fine. We plucked our eyes out and we offer them as sacrifice, so that's fine. Duh, duh, duh. They get rid of that. Then we get this dude who's Marcus, and apparently this is Mary Magdalene, and he is basically Mary Magdalene basically says, "Right, can you look out because there's going to be issues. You're on the side of the Romans. Can you basically stop any investigation, any kind of like come back to against Jesus?" So he said, "That's fine," but then he gets possessed by a demon, and as Swamp Thing continues on back in time, he appears and apparently he observes what's going on. And it's really weird because again, they kind of describe Jesus as this kind of like effectively a magician and all this kind of stuff. He's doing magic and stuff. And something okay, that's kind of weird. Um, and this demon is still intent of basically he won't kill him, but he will corrupt him because that's what demons do. And Marcus apparently now has got yellow skin, and they say, "Oh, it's what? It's just jaundice and whatever." Now, Swamp Thing turns into berries and puts it in the cup, and they basically kind of try to give this link between Swamp Thing and Jesus, and I don't quite know why and what the point of that is, because again, he's the green elemental. He's got more to do with plants. I don't quite know why these kind of two things tie together. Anyway, meanwhile, Marcus, possessed by this demon, or this demon seed, as it were, is you know, doing his thing, and he's basically says to the Mary Magdalene basically goes, "Oh well, yeah, you promised, you wasn't gonna look into it." So no, that's gonna happen because he's pretending to be the same person. Um, and then it kind of turns into a fight. It's really weird because he something intercepts the possessed centurion, tears his ear off. His ear turns into a real ear, which seems to suggest that he wasn't possessed anymore. Um, and then the demon seed is expelled from Marcus, and basically the demon is like, okay, right, you've now caused me to lose my offspring, so basically I'm going to eat you. So he eats the people that summoned him in the first place, um, and this guy gobs up the demon seed in the form of a little baby demon, and because as I was reading through it and thinking this is really weird, that's Etrigan the demon. That's then he's doing rhymes all the way through the issue, and I was thinking, well, this is weird. Is he actually Etrigan? That's the bloody hell. You're not going to tie this into the origin of Etrigan, and they kind of did in a roundabout way. And I don't know if this is like the official one that was is this what's referenced nowadays? Anyway, and then we basically go, because all that happened, we go into the rest of the story of Jesus, and he collects the blood of Christ, and Swamp Thing goes back into this timeline, and again it seems to suggest that there's some kind of link between the two of them. There's Warlord there in the background, and Gotham by Gaslight, and I was like, okay, that's really really weird. Um, so I don't know where it goes from here. I ain't got a clue, because is he going to go back and forth? I don't know. But the strange thing is, obviously, DC are not above tying characters' origins into actual kind of like pre-existing religion texts. You've got the Spectre, which is the Wrath of God. You've got Phantom Stranger. Um, you've got at one point, I believe in New 52, I can't remember if it was a Phantom Stranger or the Question. It was supposed to be like Judas Iscariot or something like that. It was a really weird choice to go. Why have you done that for? I think it was a Question. Um, so not unheard of, and considering this is kind of around the time that Sandman was out coming out, you know, maybe obviously this is Black Label now, and I believe back in the day this has probably just been a standard DC book for mature readers, just as Sandman was. So I'm not quite sure why they got rid of it, because Sandman's got very similar themes, and kind of like ties into the various religions and all this kind of stuff. You've got Eve in there, and obviously Mary, Mary and Joseph, and Adam and Eve, and I can't remember the other character now, but um, Matthew the Raven's even tied to that. So all of that is kind of like in the books around this era. So this one shouldn't have been particularly controversial, in my opinion, compared to the other stuff, or at least in DC's eyes. Other people, obviously other people might see it differently, but in DC's eyes, this is kind of like, well, we're kind of doing this already. So I don't quite know why it was banned. I'm just finding it questionable about what the point of it was, and why it was necessary to kind of do this story in the first place, purely because it doesn't make sense for Swamp Thing in the way I've understood Swamp Thing before. But again, these are 4 issues that were never printed, so maybe by the end of this issue it will change, and we will find out. There's some kind of reasoning to it. But I don't also know if this is, because I can't remember when Sandman came out. But I can't remember now if Sandman was obviously came out after this, and this is obviously pre-Vertigo. So how close was this to Vertigo? I'm not too sure. Maybe that's part of why Vertigo obviously came into existence, because they were getting, that was the reason, because they were getting a bit worried about doing all this stuff. It's like, well, okay, well, we can print this as Vertigo books. That's it. But no, as its own thing. I love seeing the adverts for Titans Annual 89. I love seeing the adverts for Batman Year 3, and all this kind of stuff. And even the Batman movie from 89. Um, but I just find it odd. But I'm very glad they've done it. And I'm hoping that this is not the only time they do it. Like I said before, if you're doing Epic DC Finest, not Epic DC Finest or Swamp Thing, I want this to be in it. I don't want a gap. If you're reprinting, they're doing Doom Patrol now, which is going to, so obviously that signifies they are willing to do Vertigo based stuff. You've got to put this in it now. If you print it now, this needs to be part of the deal, because I don't want to see this all spread out, and I want a full run of Swamp Thing when I start picking up the DC Finest of Swamp Thing when they arrive. I want it to be part of that. So yeah, so more than happy to carry on reading this. It does remind me of comics of yesteryear, and I like it for that reason. This does remind me of Swamp Thing back then. It does remind me of Sandman back then. Is how it was just cool. I just really liked it. It was just really nice. I'm just interested to see where this goes and what the point was. So anyway, so yeah, if you've read this, let me know what you think. And yeah, I will hopefully catch you on another video very soon. Thanks very much. Bye bye.